Please be aware that this episode discusses sensitive topics that some listeners may find distressing. If you or someone you know has been affected by any of these issues, please refer to the help and resources listed in the show notes for details of organisations that can provide support. Welcome to Mindful Merseyside, the podcast series which aims to improve everyone's physical and mental health in the Liverpool City region and beyond. This episode is called Mental Wellbeing, Maintaining and Growing Stronger. And we had a really interesting chat about mental wellbeing, about what affects it, how we can improve it, and why community and support for each other is so important. And we're also going to be hearing an incredible poem about mental wellness from a local spoken word artist. Right, let's get into the episode. For this episode, I'm joined by Pooja Saini, who's a reader in psychology here at Liverpool John Moores University, Kate Henderson, who's a cognitive behavioural therapist, and Joseph Roberts, who is a spoken word artist. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a really interesting one. I'd like to just start by asking you all, why you wanted to be involved in this project and why this episode in particular is important to you. Pooja, let's start with you.
I think for me, mental well-being, it affects everybody. And I think we all have to look after our mental well-being. I think there's so many things in life that can affect it. And suddenly, overnight, it might be quite low, but then it's how do you cope with that and how do you pick yourself up? So I think that's something I think is really important on a personal level and on a kind of society level.
Yeah. And Kate, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with what you've just said, Pooja. And I think for me as a CBT therapist, one of the things I always do is start by thinking about holistically what is happening in a person's life. What's the environment like they're living in? If it's a young person, what school are they in? And then start to think about, what things have they got choice and control of and what things haven't they? And just starting to focus on things that they can change as a starting point, because often it is really important for the person's well-being to feel that they can change some things in their lives.
And Joseph, why is this topic important to you?
As a spoken word artist, a poet, I work in the community, and from a creative perspective and artistic perspective, I'm using poetry and providing it as a way for people to express themselves. And on a daily basis, whether I'm in schools, working with veterans, children as young as 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 80 and 90 years old, I'm using poetry as a way for, people to sort of talk about what they're going through. So from my perspective, it's very important, days like this, and to open dialogue and to learn from each other so that we're able to bring it into our lines of work.
See, it's interesting that, because I wouldn't have thought that a lot of people would think of that creative outlet as being something that could help their mental well-being, but it clearly does.
Yeah, it definitely will. With poetry, sort of when you write something down, you can sort of look at this poem and you can say, okay, what made me choose that word? What made me decide to write about this? And you can start to work backwards and unravel a lot about yourself and what's happening in your mental space. And you can sort of, take a lot into your childhood and go back. I use a technique, particularly when I'm working with veterans and stuff. I get them to write a poem or like a letter to them, to their past self. And then I would get them to swap hands with the pen, so into their weak hand, and I'd get them to write back to their present self as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And it's like the struggle of them using their weak hand. And obviously it's hard to write in your weak hand.
Yeah.
And then when they're writing that, through like that frustration and through that difficulty, like a lot of people break down and get really upset in these workshops, and they're very good to sort of, release all these things that are going on. Like with trauma, for example, it's like, it's not dead, it's buried alive. If that's the one way to describe it. Like it's active,
Yeah.
it's still there, do you know what I mean? But it's not, but it's just buried alive deep down.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? What factors would you say can affect mental well-being? Let's start with you, Kate.
Many things affect mental well-being, thinking particularly around children and young people. Environment is massively important. A lot of young people are struggling at the moment, the kind of demographics that we live in Liverpool and different areas across the city. People have different opportunities and different access to, certain things. So the environment's really important, and the school systems, and then obviously the family systems. So I always start by thinking about the different communities that children and young people belong to, or do they belong to any communities? Mm-hmm. So all of those things kind of, we're talking about life opportunities really, aren't we? Are really important in how people can manage their own mental health and emotional well-being as a starting point.
And what other factors would you say play a part, Pooja?
Well, I've just been to an event this morning actually, and the biggest topic is poverty and how that's affecting people's well-being in many different ways, and just not being able to put the heating on, not being able to feed yourselves in the same way, and actually working people being in that position now, and families being in that position, which I think is not something we've all thought is happening or would happen or could happen, but it's actually something that a lot of people are facing across the city. So I think poverty is a huge, huge element.
Yeah. Now, Joseph, you're out in the community, obviously talking to a wide range. You've mentioned school children, you've mentioned veterans. Obviously, things have changed a lot in the last few years, but would you say that some people still consider this to be a slightly taboo subject or something that they don't want to be open about?
Definitely, yeah, it's a tough one. I'd say with the likes of social media and in recent years, our phones and things, like the majority of us, what's the first thing we do when we wake up? Most of us check our phones. We're sort of like letting a million people into our room first thing in the morning. And as we're scrolling through our feed, it's one extreme to another, and you're getting pulled emotionally from so many different angles of different things from the content that you're seeing. So I would say in recent years that, it's tough. It's a tough one. Maybe people have gotten softer, but at the same time, a lot of us are struggling at the same time, and social media's sort of, if anything, just amplified and heightened our issues and our mental health struggles.
Kate, do you think that there is the flip side to that with social media? Do you think that it can be helpful? Because you do see now a lot of people who are public figures being really open about their mental health struggles in an attempt, I would imagine, to help other people.
Definitely there's a flip side to it, and I think it comes back to like taking a balanced view and a balanced approach, and routines and boundaries. So part of my role, I work for Alder Hay part of the week. So working with children, young people and families. And one of the first things I do with a young person who comes in, maybe really dysregulated, really distressed, or, often boys, for instance, might come in presenting with lots of anger type difficulties. I always start straight away by looking at the routines and boundaries within the home. They can go out the window quite quickly. It happened with my own son during COVID. He was only little and I was busy working and he was on his game a lot. And with boys particularly, this sort of thing. So just really thinking about those routines and boundaries, thinking about family time. Are people eating meals together? Have people got a table to sit around? Not all families have, so you've got to be really mindful of all those things, but really starting by trying to build some family values and some quality time together is so important. But social media can totally have the adverse effect, but I think it's about making sure that it's kind of regulated and balanced.
Yeah, and I think to follow on from what you're saying, Kate, some of the research we conducted during lockdown as well with adults and children and young people, a lot of young people spoke about how much they loved spending time with their parents together and how much they really valued time with their dads. That came through a lot. And I just think it really highlighted and amplified how much that might not have been happening before. And some young people said they just loved the fact they could sit around the table and have dinner together or have more conversations. So I think even though there was a lot of negativity of what happened then and, some of the impacts of COVID, there were some good and positive things that we found. And a lot of adults as well spoke about that social connectedness they formed with people through other means. And for some people, actually, it reduced anxiety of the workplace, going out all the time into society, and just slowed them back down for a few minutes. So I think there's something about reflecting on what's good for people's well-being, and sometimes in the madness of life, we can forget that as well.
Yeah. Kate, do you think mental well-being is something that we should each be responsible for our own, or do you think other people should be helping?
So I think there's a responsibility for our own, but there's also that responsibility for collective care as well. And I think it differs, you know, there's cultural differences, isn't there? There's lots of different kinds of issues around society and how that's formed. So we've got to kind of have our own responsibility and then collectively have that responsibility as well, because not everybody will have the same access to the same means. So we really do need to work together on this.
And is there any work you're involved in that is working with that?
Yeah, quite a lot of projects that I'm involved in at the moment. One that's just about to get off the ground next month actually is a project I'm involved in with Liverpool City Council and School Improvement Liverpool. It's called Growing Stronger, and I'm involved in a certain part of that which is called Growing Stronger Together. So we're going to be developing a training programme focused on kind of helping adults to understand themselves a little bit better, maybe understand their own life experiences, similar to some of the stuff Joseph was talking about actually, and then helping them to kind of be more compassionate to themselves, to kind of process and accept the difficulties that they've had in their life while making kind of really small changes and step towards a better quality of life, basically.
And can you talk a little bit about the NHS 5 Ways to Wellbeing?
Yeah, definitely. So 5 Ways to Wellbeing is a really simple NHS initiative. And one way to remember it is by using the acronym MAGIC, which stands for being mindful. So kind of mindful activities, which might just be kind of going for a walk, but, you know, not being attached to your phone all of the time and just trying to pay attention to what's around you in nature.
Could I just jump in there? Because I know that this word is thrown around a lot and it's like you need to be mindfulness. Can you just explain exactly what being mindful means for people who might have heard it but don't really understand what that actually means?
Yeah, so a simple way to just be mindful is just to be kind of present in the moment. So, you know, I'm not talking about any type of deep meditations. If you want to do that, you can do, and it's something that you have to practice and learn and develop, but just to be mindful and paying attention in the moment. So if you were going for a mindful walk, you might be kind of paying attention to the weather, paying attention, you know, using all of your senses really to kind of just be in that moment and enjoy that walk. And your mind will wander because, you know, we've all got busy lives, but it's just acknowledging that your mind's wandered and then you bring it back to the present moment. So taking some time to get outside, it's something I've been able to do a bit more as my children have got older. But, you know, if you've got young children at home, it might just be about stepping outside if you can't get out for a walk, that sort of thing.
And you mentioned there that the meditation requires practice. I do think that being present requires practice because you can be in a walk in the park, can't you? And you're thinking, right, I'm concentrating on the sounds I can hear and what I can see. And then you go, oh, that's nice. I'll take a little picture of that for Instagram. And then your mind's off somewhere else and you've checked who's messaged you. And it's very quick and easy to get off track with that, isn't it?
It is, but that's being mindful in itself, because you're mindful that you've been distracted and you're mindful that you're thinking about other things, and then you're bringing it back. So, yeah. So that can be, you know, really helpful. So that's the M for magic. And then the next one is about activity. So being active, you know, movement is so important. And I think for our children and young people, we need to be getting them up and moving more. It really helps kind of calm the nervous system down and help them to feel, you know, more able to kind of be calm or process difficult emotions. So that's the A.
Yeah, so activity is really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things I've been hearing about are different type of sporting activities as well to try and help with young people's or adults' mental health. So whether social prescribing even might include doing some activities, boxing, you know, going for walks, or I've started playing golf. And one of those reasons is to have that time to be mindful, to be near nature,
so important,
seeing trees and green spaces. And I think it, you know, on a personal level, I've seen how much it helps. But one thing that's been spoken about is also when people get involved in these things, they learn a bit more kind of about respect for each other and boundaries again and rules, but within kind of a fun space. But actually that can be really good for your development at any stage of life.
And I guess sometimes if you're starting to do things like that, it's extending your social circle as well, isn't it? You're meeting different people in different situations, and taking you maybe out of a situation that you're not happy in, especially if it's at home or in school or in work, the places that you're spending a lot of time.
Definitely. And so the G is about being generous, and that doesn't mean, giving away all your money or all your worldly goods, but it's about being generous with your time. So it's thinking about the things that you do in your spare time, the community groups, or if you volunteer in certain things, helping a neighbour perhaps. We saw a lot of that in COVID, didn't we? It's really good for your own mental health and emotional well-being when you kind of help others. So that was the G. I is for being interested, so learning new skills, or it might be, further education or higher education or courses. But, always being interested could be doing the Sudoku puzzle. Poetry, yeah. All of these, learning a new skill, anything like that, it kind of keeps you motivated. And then the C is for being connected, so being connected to other people. So we've got those 5 ways to wellbeing, which is I feel really underused NHS initiative.
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, it was one of the National Trust put it into the acronym MAGIC. It's actually, the NHS didn't put it in that, but it's the same 5 things. And I think MAGIC's a lovely way to remember it. So if I'm working with children or adults, we've done that work to kind of try and regulate the household and what's going on, and routines and boundaries and connectedness. We'll then look at those 5 ways to wellbeing. We'll say, right, let's just set one little goal. Which one do you feel a little bit like you need to focus on more? Which one are you a little bit depleted? And we just set one small goal, and they always come back with a little bit of a sense of achievement if they've been able to do one of those little things. And it's just a lovely way in to kind of start to let people feel like they've got some control over making things better in their own lives.
And Pooja, you've mentioned certain positives to come out of COVID, and I definitely feel like that's the case, but I'd be interested to know, how much of that do you think fell away as soon as life went back to normal? Because you're right, everyone was forced to slow down, and it did bring up some brilliant things, and it, people reconnected, people took time to actually think, well, what do I enjoy doing? What don't I enjoy doing that I have been doing in my life? But when the world opened up, everyone was so keen, or most people were so keen to get back out and get back to normal. Do you think a lot of that got left behind?
I think some of it definitely did. But I think what also happened is, because we were so keen to go out, a lot of people's anxiety grew very quickly. Again, on a personal level, I remember feeling like that, but I've seen it a lot, especially with children and young people, or anyone who was connected to someone who may have been at risk and was really fearful about bringing back risks to their home. So I think there was maybe an initial excitement to, be let loose and go out again. But actually, I think once we were all going out again and getting busy really quickly, I think the anxiety levels grew for a lot of people, and we're seeing some of the lasting effects of that now. And I do believe some of the mental health issues that we've seen increasing are some of the lasting effects of that.
Yeah, are you seeing that, Kate? Because really now we're kind of 4 years on. It's easy to look back and go, COVID. But at the time, 4 years ago, we were scared. People weren't leaving their houses.
Yeah, well, it's been a catastrophic event internationally, isn't it, globally? Yeah. But I also think, we need to practice this stuff. This is part of being mindful, is that you have to kind of think to yourself, what am I doing for myself? What am I doing for my family? What keeps me well? And it's a practice, and that's part of being mindful, is making sure that you book those things into your diary. When we're working with young people, we talk to them about young people who might present with mood-related difficulties. We talk to them about activity scheduling. So literally, it's planning your diary really, so that what makes you feel good. When can you do that across the week? And you start to recognise what doesn't make you feel so good. Okay, let's reduce what doesn't make you feel good, and let's increase some of the stuff that does. So I think some of this stuff is really habit forming, and you've got to be on top of it and recognise that, and that's hard to do, even for someone who's kind of trained in this area. So helping families to recognise that is so important, because you're kind of like that observing eye who's coming in and can kind of say, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture and see what little things we can do to help.
And Joseph, do you find what you do with the writing and that creativity, do you find that's mindful for you?
For me, most definitely. I'm able to be very present with my thoughts And there's not a single other activity in the world where you can literally see your own thoughts. Like when you write something, when you write a poem or anything really, you can like literally see what's going on in your head. So I listen to a lot of classical music and film scores and things like that when I'm writing. So for me, yeah, it's a very mindful activity to do. I also run. I'm actually doing the Liverpool half marathon this Sunday. So being able to, go out for a run, I actually find a lot of symmetry and connections between running and writing. And I don't even when I look back on a run, I don't even know what my head's, what I'm thinking about when I'm running. I'm just running. So, but that's also being quite present because I'm in tune with my body and sort of like my heartbeat. And as I'm running and I'm breathing the fresh air and I'm sort of, exploring the world, when you decide to just one day, I'm going to do a different route today, or I'm going to, and it's just sometimes something as simple as that, like going a different route on your run, just makes you like see the world differently. Sounds crazy, but that's what I found anyway.
No, it doesn't sound crazy at all. But so they're kind of your mindful activities. And obviously the running is ticking that activity
hitting
as
lots
well.
of other ways to well-being.
Yeah, definitely. You're outside, you're in nature. But I guess it's about finding what works for you, isn't it? Because some people maybe don't have that creative element to them, so they wouldn't want to or enjoy writing. Some people aren't physically able to run.
Yeah.
So it's about finding what works for you, isn't it?
Definitely, and that's the collective care element, isn't it? Having the people around you who can kind of support you in that, for children and young people. Our schools are good places, aren't they, to try and be kind of bringing out the best in children and young people, but those opportunities are really important. Children need to try lots of different things before they find what it is that is going to kind of bring out the best in them.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to know, I guess you've already answered this, Joseph, but I'd be interested to know, Kate and Pooja, what it is for you that you find helps your mental well-being and helps you feel good. And actually, interestingly, all three of you, what you find doesn't as well.
Yeah. So for me, I about just coming up to about a year ago, I try to run, but I'm not very good at it and I don't really like it very much. But I try to do it. But about this time last year, I decided to try and get myself addicted to walking, and because I felt like it was a bit easier. It's mindful. We've got a woods near where we live. We've got the dog, and my children are a bit older where I can go for a walk in the morning. So I started doing 12,000 steps a day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit behind at the moment just because I've been full of cold this week, but I do feel like a real urge to go for a walk every day now because I've been doing it since May last year, and it puts me off a little bit if I know I haven't been. So usually I get two shorter walks in a day or a big long walk of a weekend. So that's really important. But also my friendships and kind of relationships with my family and friends are massively important. So try and connect with people a lot as well.
And can I ask, you said you started the walking last May. What differences have you noticed since starting that?
Oh, a big difference really. Well, I've lost a bit of weight. It's impacted the way I eat as well because I've been more kind of conscious of trying to eat well, and I'm definitely a lot more toned as well than I was. So I just feel a bit fitter, a little bit more energy.
Yeah, because obviously there's physical benefits as well. I've just heard about a new study that's come out that's saying, I can't remember the amount of steps, but walking decreases your risk of breast cancer, which you would never even think of. So it's not just the mental benefits, is it? It's everything. And walking is something that the majority of people to some extent can probably do. And it's free and you can do it anywhere.
And there's loads of research around side-by-side walking as well. So, I'll have a walk with my husband. We'll get to chat through things that we don't get a chance to. I'll walk with the kids and my teenager and we'll talk about those different things. So, and I'll know if I'm having a stressful day, take a break, go and have a walk in the middle of your day. And it's really encouraged in the workplace where I work as well. We're encouraged to take breaks and get out for a walk.
And sometimes I do think it's easier to open up to, whoever you're talking to, whatever relationship you have with them. Sometimes it's easier to do that on neutral ground, outside, without the pressure of sitting down, looking at each other in a quiet room.
Definitely. That's the research around side-by-side walking, especially for teens. And, we talk to parents about active listening skills. So trying to kind of just listen and summarise, and listening to understand rather than trying to fix.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. Pooja, what is it for you that makes you feel good mentally?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that I like playing golf.
Yeah.
And I think for me, walking without a purpose, I can start to get bored.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being introduced to golf is good for me, because you've got a purpose of getting the ball in the hole, hopefully. So I'd say that's kind of an outdoor activity. And my children play, my husband plays. That's why I started playing. So it's a nice social family activity as well, as long as we're not being too competitive.
Well, I was going to say.
So yeah, but actually one activity definitely that I think I do to kind of maybe get away from everyday work, family life is I love jigsaws. And I find with them that I can really focus and I can get a few hours to myself. And it might frustrate people around me actually, because I'm kind of like, right, I think they know this is my time, and I'm saying, leave me now for a little bit. So that's something I find that really helps with my own kind of maybe aligning myself again, and also having a bit of time out.
But I think it's important to have those boundaries, isn't it? Where people around you know, okay, don't bother her. And it's also teaching your children that it's okay to say, I'd like a bit of time just for me now, not to game, just to do something healthy.
Yeah, definitely. And it's important to kind of come together as a family, but also to value your own time individually as well, and whatever that might be. Definitely.
So we've talked about the good things, but it is also obviously important to recognise, as you mentioned earlier, Kate, what it is sometimes that isn't making you feel good. Joseph, what would you say are your things that you know really you should avoid?
Sounds quite simple, but I'm very aware of like energy in a room of people, and I know sort of I'm very careful and conscious of my time and energy and who I put it into and where I put it into. So I know that if I'm in a room or if I'm in a situation that's not for me, I know that I need to remove myself. Quite simple, but yeah.
That's brilliant that you've got those boundaries.
Yeah, it's just having boundaries. It's just knowing, I think when you know who you are and know your worth, you're able to sort of organise your time and your energy of where it's needed, what's necessary in order for you to be at your optimum sort of capacity to live your life sort of like to the fullest.
Yeah. And Kate, how about you?
So I think mine is around fairness and social justice, which comes from being the daughter of by a man who was high up in the union.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really triggered by fairness and unfairness. That was something I've had to kind of work to be able to kind of manage when situations aren't fair, and be able to kind of use my influence to maybe improve the situation and not kind of let it drown me out.
Mm-hmm. And Pooja, how about you?
I think conflicts, family conflicts, friend conflicts, parental children, I think that really can affect my well-being. But I think a few people have said to me, after you turn 40, you kind of can recognise some of those things and you remove yourself a little bit more. And a little bit what Joseph said, really. And I think I felt that as well. I'm 45 now, and I think I kind of know myself a little bit more. I'm a bit more confident with, no, I don't want to be in that situation, or I know that I'm going to be in an awkward situation. So I think learning how to recognise the things that affect your mental well-being negatively, it's a hard thing to learn. But if you can learn that, I think that's really helpful.
So it's interesting none of you mentioned screen time, because I do feel like that's probably something that most people could do better with.
Yeah.
We obviously talked about social media, but not just that, just screen time. How would you say that negatively impacts mental well-being?
We're all addicted to our phones. Yeah. We are all addicted to our phones, to the point that my thumb is always sore because I text really fast with my thumb. So it's quite terrible, really, isn't it? But I try to have some boundaries around my phone use. Try and have certain times if you're eating, no phones at the table and things like that. But these things slip in, don't they, from time to time. But just try to be mindful of it and take breaks, and put my phone in other rooms when I'm working from home, or just to kind of have a break. But also I like to listen to podcasts as well. So kind of also allowing myself to remember that this is the day and age that we do live in as well. And, so it's just striking that balance.
So I would love to hear one of your poems, Joseph. And if you could read one, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, so I'm happy to perform a poem for you. It's called Luggage. There's only so much luggage you can take on the plane. Only so much trouble you can take until you go insane. Trauma, anxiety, depression. Man, put it on the scale and it all seems to weigh the same. So I take some out, but it feels like I'm adding more on. I'm ashamed of the bag, I don't even want to pass it on. How can we board the flight if we can't admit what's yours and mine? Accountability's hard to find, the problems continue to pile high. Man, we're carrying luggage. Cases upon cases. I keep seeing people making the same mistakes because people are unprepared to tell the world where their vacation is. I don't mean a sunny place. I mean where they're going inside their brain. Man, we're carrying luggage. Cases upon cases. I keep seeing people making the same mistakes because people are unprepared to tell the world where their vacation is. I don't mean a sunny place. I mean where they're going inside their brain. Buckled in on the runway, ready to take flight. But there's always a last minute delay in my mind. I'm so close to asking the pilot to turn around, man, I'm homesick. And the wheels haven't even lifted off the ground. How many times have you had what you wanted to say planned out? But when it comes down to saying it, the words just won't come out. Taking off and landing is said to be the hardest part. Exits are here, and I still can't see where they are. Man, we're carrying luggage. Cases upon cases. I keep seeing people making the same mistakes because people are unprepared to tell the world where their vacation is. I don't mean a sunny place. I mean where they're going inside their brain. And it doesn't matter what class you're in, which seat you take. Every Joe Schmo, Mary Jane feels it when the plane shakes. People lie and tell us they're always going to be there for us. But no one seems to be there through the turbulence, man. Nobody takes it serious. You could be shivering, quivering in your seat, and people would just watch and think it's hilarious. So when I see all the stats about the bags, it's not that mysterious, because everybody's had at least one bad travel experience. Man, I'm on flight peace of mind. But that doesn't mean there's no guarantee I won't be on a bumpy ride. See, man, I've got nothing to hide. Because what we define as light and heavy can only be carried inside. Man, I've been through the mental detector and it beeped 1,000 times. And it would for you a bit. Because we all have mental health. We all have a sense of self and sometimes get ahead of ourselves. Man, I say the phrase, having a bad day. Man, I know it way too well. But our mouths are zipped up, so we can't hear each other's screams for help. I said, man, we're carrying luggage. Cases upon cases. Man, I see it on faces upon faces. In all the places that I've stayed in, we're all afraid to get weighed in. How many planes are on there waiting? Carrying people that can't take it. Carrying people that can't say it.
That was brilliant. Do you just want to explain what that's about?
So I was actually coming off a holiday. I think I was going on holiday actually. And I was just in the airport and you sort of like, you know, you're waiting for your luggage and stuff. And it's going around on that conveyor belt and you just see everybody's luggage. And people have different cases, different size cases. Some are massive, some are just a small case. Some might even be bringing like an instrument or something, or it might even be anything really. Doesn't matter what shape, size it is, what colour it is, what design it is. We're all just carrying luggage and sort of, it's only when we talk about it that it becomes visible. So even us right now sitting at this table, we're all carrying luggage, but it's only when you talk about it that it sort of becomes visible. And it goes back to that question before, like what you were saying was, is this societal? Is this something that, should you just look after yourself, or should we be looking after each other? Well, I'd say the answer is we should look after each other. But of course, you've got to look after yourself first, and you've got to be able to carry your own luggage before being available, emotionally available, mentally available to go and help somebody else carry their luggage. I mean, if you go on any plane on holiday in a time of emergency, they'd say, put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. So that's what I believe we should do when it comes to our mental health. I mean, I think caring, in a way, inherently comes from selfishness in a way, because you have to be selfish and to look after yourself before you can go on and have that ability and that sense of care to be able to go and help somebody else. And it's only through that ripple effect that we're all able to carry our luggage, and we're all able to open up about it and go, in the journey of life, we're all able to go wherever we need to go.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point you've made there, isn't it? Because I think you were talking about things being visible to other people. I think we're all guilty probably of, if you're going through a bad time, of thinking it's only me. Everybody else is fine. It's just me. And that connection and opening up makes such a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think picking up on what Joseph just said about being selfish, this is something I've spoken to a lot of friends or colleagues about when they've spoken about the fact that they are being troubled by something and they are opening up and letting you in, is that I've had to actually say, for your self-care, you need to start being selfish and think about yourself. Mm-hmm. But it's, in a way, it's a bit sad that we're actually saying be selfish to care about yourself.
Yeah.
But they're the exact words that I've used as well.
Well, I agree, but it's interesting because I feel like sometimes people talk about somebody in a very positive way and go, oh, they're so selfless. Everything they do is for other people. But you're right, like Kate, with your walks, that's something for you that fills your cup up so that
it's
you're able to
self-soothe activity.
Absolutely.
So it soothes me and makes me better, more available for my family, my work and my friends, because I feel more like that's a little thing that's just for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if there are people listening to the podcast now who would like any kind of level with their mental well-being, really, where is a good place to start? We mentioned the NHS Steps to Wellbeing. What else can people look for?
So, I always talk to people about kind of building their own self-soothe toolkit. So some of the work I do as a CBT therapist is based around compassion-focused therapy. And that's where we look at it's a 3 systems model where we think about our threat system, our drive and motivation system, and then our soothing system. And we want them all to be balanced for us to be able to function well in life. And often the threat system gets like really inflated, as does the drive system, because people keep going, and that's where burnout comes from. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of talk to them about how we balance these 3 systems just by drawing 3 circles that are of an equal size, and thinking about what things that they can put within their soothing system to help them to feel more balanced. And again, it's habits, it's practicing things daily, and that might be like small things for themselves. It might be around having to practice working on their thinking errors, if that's something that they've, some people have a lot of thinking errors. We all have some of them. So it might be about learning more about themselves. It might be about learning to let certain things go, but kind of really doing that exploration of what is going to help them to feel more soothed.
And Pooja, is there anywhere specific that you'd signpost people to?
I think, to be honest, you've got to look internally and actually recognise yourself that there's an issue first, and then asking for help. So you've just said about support places. So depending on what levels of mental health, I do a lot of work in suicide prevention and self-harm. So there's specific services, but I would say community, looking at what's available in your community, using the Hub of Hope, which is a brilliant app that's been developed that you can just put your postcode in and it brings up all the things in your area to do with mental health and mental well-being. So having a look what's in the area, but I really think admitting to yourself that you're not feeling 100%, and also letting others know and ask for help. I really think that's important.
And Joseph, if people want to hear more of your amazing poems, where can they find you?
So you could just check out some of your stuff on YouTube, or just search up Joseph Roberts on YouTube. you can find that Luggage video. I filmed it in John Lennon Airport. So you can check that out, and you can check out some of my work on social media. It's just official Joseph Roberts on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media platforms. And my advice would be for people to simply write, give it a go. It's good for your mental health. It's good to get things off your chest. And, even if you're struggling to write, or you feel, I'm not creative, sometimes I like to do is when I don't have time to write, or I'm in a busy time, just get out your phone, get on your voice notes, and just start talking about something, or something that's on your mind, or an idea. And then you'll listen back to it and you'll find the poetry in that. That's something I like to do with people who, I work with people who literally can't write, but they're still able to find the poetry in some of the stuff that they say, some of the phrases that they use, some of the words they use. So just give it a go.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. You've been listening to Mindful Merseyside, brought to you by the Institute for Health Research at Liverpool John Moores University and produced by Inabella Media. We hope you found the conversation informative and insightful. If you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues discussed in this episode, please refer to the help and resources listed in the show notes for details of organisations that can provide support. I've been your host, Gemma Cutting, and don't forget to subscribe to Mindful Merseyside wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join us again soon.